Hello, I'm Lucy from the Folk Forecast, and I'm here with Alex and Ian from Of Stone and Earth, who have just released a brand new album, their very first album. I have it right here. So I thought I would chat to them today about the album and their influences and find out more about them. So hi, Alex and Ian.
Hi.
So nice to see you. How are you?
Yeah, not so bad,
good,
thanks.
Absolutely.
So I'm just going to dive right into the questions here. First of all, I'd just like to know more about how Of Stone and Earth came about.
I think it came about really because I think we were both in Wreckers Morris, which is a Cornish Morris side, and it really started from just playing and singing at sessions in sort of like you do with Morris. You go to the pub after rehearsals, and then they go to festivals, and we started singing more and more. Well, myself playing and Alex singing in pub sessions at festivals with Wreckers, and then from that we started doing a little bit of gigging, doing covers mainly.
Yeah, mainly just covers and stuff, and you get more and more into it, and we just it just sort of slowly evolved more and more. And before we knew, we kind of like sort of, well, we thought, well, we why don't we like actually call ourselves something?
And we wanted to. I think we as I say, we were doing covers of different material, and we started. And a few people were saying to us, you should write your own material. And we'd thought about that, and I'd thought about it for quite a while, that I wanted to write my own songs as well. And so that's exactly what we started to do, was write our own material. And I think it was when we started doing that we kind of thought, well, we need to sort of call ourselves something.
Yeah. Something to focus towards as well. We thought, we start building up a sort of duo and a sort of background to what we were doing. We just thought it'd be just a nice thing to sort of do as a sort of couple and musical duo as well. So that's how that kind of started.
Yeah. So were you together before you went into Wreckers Morris, or did you meet there?
No,
we were together before that. We've been married about 12 years now, and so we've been together for quite a while actually. So it was actually me that started with the Morris. I'd been to Sidmouth Folk Festival, and I'd seen Wreckers Morris, and they're just really good. And I realised that they were doing a workshop there, so I thought, I'm going to go along with that, take my accordion along and join in.
Yeah.
I found that they actually rehearsed not very far from us, so that was it. And I started playing with them, and I said to Alex, you really should come along and dance, so we both got involved with it from there.
Just gradually evolved through Morris and then into your own duo.
Yeah, absolutely.
So your work has quite a wide range of influences. How would you describe your sound?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, and we've asked ourselves quite a few times this recently, because you upload your music here, there and everywhere, and you've got to put a category, and sometimes they don't have the category you think you should be in and I thought, what are we? But
it's kind of, I think, because I play accordion, which is sort of associated with folk, and we've come from doing a sort of folk background to a certain extent. I guess we've thought of it as folk, but it's sort of, a friend of mine called it indie folk, and I guess you could sort of say it's slightly alternative folk. It's folk, but it's not quite folk. We don't try to write folk songs, if you see what I mean. It's not, but I think we just write what we write. But I think that acoustic combination of accordion and voice.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. We kind of did write more of a traditional folky song, because we thought that's what we should be doing, and it never kind of worked. It never clicked with us. So we sort of went back to the drawing board and started going sort of the direction that we're going in now.
Yeah.
And it just kind of clicked more with us. So
I think the secret is to write what you feel you need to write, rather than writing what you think people want to hear you sing.
Yeah.
And so we started trying to write folk songs, and there were well, say so ourselves, they were quite good, but I think we found we wanted to just write what just felt natural to us to write. And that was then bringing in all the kind of musical influences, I suppose, that we've both got, really, which is quite wide ranging, you know. So
yeah. So what artists are you inspired by, and what do you usually listen to yourselves?
Well, for me, I've been almost like a lifelong Björk fan, so that's where a lot of my influence comes from. The sort of beats and the words and the lyrics, that sort of emptiness of how, you know, Björk shows her music to her audience. Obviously, again, more sort of modern contemporary folk artists, you know, Hannah James, Rowan Reinigans, all sort of in my brain all the time when I'm thinking about music. So that's a lot of what I'm thinking. And I know you're...
Yeah, and I've got a classical music background. I come from a background of learning classical piano, and I sort of bring that whole classical world as well. And I mean, I just love everything from opera through jazz, through golden era film music, 60s, 70s stuff, you know, Bowie, right up to, you know, modern people like FKA Twigs,
yeah, that's another.
Bat for Lashes, Elbow, you know, Guy Garvey, people like that. I mean, so it's just a really wide ranging music. I mean, and the other thing that I particularly like, I think one of our very first songs was inspired by a trip to Iceland in 2015, and one of the songs on the album, Earth Melts Away, that comes from that trip actually. But and obviously, as Alex was saying before, she's a big fan of Björk, and I am myself, and she's Icelandic, and that's made us look a little bit at the music that's going on in Iceland. And I mean, that Iceland's got an incredible music scene, but it's also got its own folk music. And Icelandic folk music is quite unique. It's got its own very sort of beautiful character to it. It's quite empty and dark in a way. And I guess that all sort of filters in as well.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely hear the Björk influence on the album. And I think Earth Melts Away is a really interesting one, actually, to talk about in terms of it exploring the issues of climate change and what's happening on the planet. So I wonder if you could tell us a bit more about that one.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as I said, we went to Iceland in 2015, and I'd never actually seen a glacier in real life before. And one day we were traveling along and thought, well, we'll go and visit one of the glaciers. And it's only one of the most moving experiences of my life to be confronted by this, just, you know, incredible structure in front of you. But what was interesting about it was that you can hear it dripping, you can hear it melting. And there's this realization that we'd walked up the valley to reach this glacier. I mean, it was the realization that actually a few years ago, you wouldn't be able to stand where we were standing because the glacier would have been there. And now it's sort of moved further up the valley. And there was a great sadness about it somehow, that this incredible, very primeval sort of structure was sort of just slowly melting away. And it really moved us, actually. I think about that was just one of those moments in your life where you sort of, something really goes home. And that's really where that song sort of comes from. So that's where that first line of standing where once stood so much more sort of comes from, because you stand there looking at this magnificent place, and yet you feel you're almost like standing somewhere before humans were ever on the planet. It's such a primeval sort of landscape, and yet you also realize that you can actually hear it and see it melting. So
yeah, it really brings it home to
really brings it home,
you, and to hear it like time ticking away.
Yeah,
you can actually do something about it.
Absolutely. So that's very much where that sort of song came from. I didn't write it then, but it was later on, sort of a couple of years ago, I guess, when it started sort of songwriting, and that moment just came back to me, and I thought, I've got to write about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what you said as well about Iceland and how the landscape really links with the music as being quite open spaces and things like that. I was going to ask you about how you're inspired by the area where you live, because that seems to feed in a lot with all of your work.
Absolutely,
I suppose Dartmoor itself is almost like a mini Iceland. You know, there's vast landscapes and, you know, hills and tors and valleys, and, you know, you can be in the middle of nowhere. And again, like with Iceland, you can drive hundreds of miles and not see any kind of human inhabitants at all, and you can kind of get that on Dartmoor. And again, what fascinates me with any of that sort of landscape is actually, you know, totally engrossing. It can overtake you, and actually, although it can be scary, it's actually, again, very moving. And I love that darkness as well, and I love the thought of actually that, you know, big landscape has its own personality, and that, you know, looking at the sort of darkness is a fascination in itself. Obviously in the summer, and it's all beautiful and the sun's out and everything, it's wonderful. But I also love it when the rain's, you know, absolutely hammering it down, and the wind's blowing a gale, because it, you know, you feel it's alive, and I guess that's what I pick up on, and you know, draw a lot of my lyrics and stuff, and how I want the song to feel. Sometimes I want it to be real, you know, gutsy. So that's, and I know you pick up on that a lot, and because you do a lot of walking.
Yeah, I walk a lot on the moor and around and about. I just love losing myself in that, that atmosphere. And like Alex said, it can be quite dark, but there's a beauty in that darkness. It does have its own sort of personality, and I really like. I think we both really pick up on that. So there is that darkness there for sure.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of Alex's paintings and drawings as well are around that area. So I'm interested in how your visual artwork, both in terms of paintings and drawings and your videos, how they sort of link in with your musical work.
Again, I think it's really closely related. And when I look at my paintings, I think, oh yeah, I can see my songs in those paintings. Again, I've just always been fascinated with the dark beauty of places, and what that can, like, you know, sort of bring out in the emotion in whether visual or, you know, audio sort of emotion. And I love the combination of the two as well. And I have, you know, linked my art with poetry that then links back to song lyrics. And I like to weave all that in together, because I think it makes more of a sort of story behind the songs.
I think it's an idea also that, I mean, I think a lot of people probably feel it, but when you're in a wild place like that, you can look at it as you're the person looking at the landscape, but you also get a feel that the landscape's looking back at you, and that it's almost, you know, got its own soul almost. It's almost like you're being watched as well, by some imaginary sort of presence. You can feel as a lot of people do, you can feel very small in those sort of landscapes and quite insignificant, and but that's also quite a lovely sort of feeling as well.
Well, I think both your videos and your artwork and your music that just set an atmosphere, and I see what you mean with the storytelling. I can imagine that you could maybe look at the paintings and listen to the music and imagine the story for yourself.
Absolutely.
But in terms of your songwriting, how did you develop that skill?
Well, I think for me it was a miracle, really. And as you know, because we went on the course together up at Maddie Pryor's there, where Hannah James and Grace Petrie were, you know, tutoring. And I think, I don't know, the key obviously unlocked the door that weekend. And again, for me, going through a few emotional difficulties at the time, it was just a perfect storm. And I used writing lyrics as a sort of healing tool, as well as a sort of a different way of expressing art and feelings like that. I think that's how it happened for me. And then once you've done one, you do your next one, and then you sort of start building on what you've developed at the beginning, and then you just can't stop, and then it's just you're away.
So develop a muscle that you never knew you had. And I mean, in the main, Alex writes the lyrics and I write the music mainly. And there's a couple of songs I've written the lyrics, and there's a couple of songs Alex has written music, but generally Alex writes the words and I write the music. And yeah, I was just so chuffed when Alex first started bringing these lyrics to me, and I was thinking, actually, I've written this song, what do you think? And I just look at the words and think, this is really good. And writing the music was then I can't say easy, but I could see. I think what's quite nice is that I find that it's quite intuitive what Alex wants to say. Alex will often sort of write words and then say to me what she's trying to get across. But I seem to have a little bit of a sixth sense in that I kind of pick up what she wants anyway.
Yeah. And
then I just go away and sit at the piano and enjoy myself, And
yeah, that's the great thing about the fact that you obviously know each other so well and you understand each other. You're trying to get from a song, that you can work separately on the music and the lyrics, but still create something that's really coherent and bring together as one whole.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, there's so much going on in all of the songs as well. I feel like you could examine any of them and look at all the lyrics and have quite a lot to say about them. So I thought maybe if we just pick out a couple and see if there's anything you could tell us about what they're about and what inspired them, maybe. Strangely Beautiful, the title track. It would be nice to maybe know a bit more about that one.
I'll let Alex answer that one.
Strangely Beautiful. Well, that for me started off as a poem, really. And again, it's about not being afraid of being absorbing solitary moments and just sort of going with the flow of that, and actually that they can sort of bring more moments of inspiration, and that sometimes just as humans we have to wait for those moments, appreciate them, and everything will be okay, if you know what I mean. It's just sort of I know the first line, you don't know it, but I've walked that line. It's just sort of, again, sort of expressing, we don't always know what's going on in other people's lives and stuff, but it's kind of like, we've all had those moments, and sometimes you've got to embrace them and sort of appreciate that sort of learning of yourself, really. So I think that's
there's something beautiful about that.
Yes, strange and strangely beautiful. And I suppose that kind of, I like sort of think our music is like that. People might sort of think, oh, that's a bit strange, but it's kind of beautiful and I like it. And again, it's sort of sometimes in life that sometimes not always the nicest things can actually turn out to be really beautiful and renewing. So that's kind of strangely beautiful.
I think what Alex just said then with it, that's why it became why we gave the album the title of that song. It was just, we thought, well, it kind of applies, hopefully it applies to what the listener will find about our music, that it's strangely beautiful.
Yeah, maybe Wild Creature as well, if there's anything you could tell us about that one.
Well, again, walking Dartmoor, we've got a lot of green lanes, those sort of ancient trackways. And I was kind of doing sort of, again, sort of mindfulness walking. So one day I was sort of walking, listening to my own rhythm of my footprints and listening, really taking active notice of listening to birds and the tree. Again, this is all sort of, I was trying to pick up ideas for songs and opening that creative space. So as I was on this walk, I was just walking and I was noticing leaves and stones, and I just thought, what if Devon has its own sort of wild creature? Like other countries have trolls and yetis and things like that. I thought, what if I suddenly turned around and there was a wild creature? Nothing scary, but we always just think it's just humans around, and yet there could be sort of other beings that live their own lives within the woodlands, and they sometimes cross our paths, and they're looking at us, wondering who we are, and sometimes we think, is there other creatures out there? And it was I wanted to be a song about opening your imagination. So when you go out for walks in the countryside, especially as we're going through this this year with COVID and everything, actually getting outside and really appreciating sounds and visual elements of stuff, instead of just kind of just walking through and maybe not noticing stuff. So it was I wanted something for to spark people's imaginations. That's where Wild Creature was born for me.
I think the music for Wild Creature actually came from a little riff on the piano. I was actually sitting in my office and working one day, and Alex came in, and we've got a keyboard up there, and Alex just came to mess on the keyboard and just play these few notes.
I said,
and we sort of looked at each other, and I said, that's wild, that's the Wild Creature.
That's the Wild Creature.
And so I just took that and sort of developed it, really. Yeah.
Great. So it's a bit of a mixture in terms of the whole album of sort of real experiences and imagined ones.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it kind of splits also into, I guess the album's full of two of our main themes, I guess, that we sort of started to realize are coming out in all our songs. One is the natural world and how we react to it, and the other is just raw human emotions as well, and how we react to other people. And so I think they're the sort of two main themes that come out in all our songs, the songs that we've written since the songs that are on this album. Those two themes are sort of continuing. So
yeah, it's funny how those themes can sometimes just emerge without you necessarily.
Yeah.
It's just the more work you produce, the more you realize there are those threads running through all of your work.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's back to just writing words and music, writing what we feel rather than trying to write anything we think we should write. And then you notice these natural kind of themes that are coming through, and possibly, I suppose it's probably true in the music as well. I guess slowly you start developing a certain style starts to develop, I suppose.
Yeah, that's great that it sort of developed really organically, and it's something genuine, a real genuine portrayal of you and what you put into the world, and you're not consciously trying to be anything that you're not.
Absolutely, that's it. That's right. That's correct. Yeah, I mean, we don't. It's not about trying to be different either. It's not about we must be different. It's just about being honest.
You just are.
Yeah, we just are. We're just honest to what we are and what we write, and then obviously, hope people respond to that and like it.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Are there any tracks in particular that you're really proud of, like your favourites?
Oh, that's quite a difficult one, isn't it? Which are your favourite children?
Wild Creature is probably one of my favourites. I also like Time Before Night, because that was a bit of a.
It's got a little bit different, isn't it?
Bit different, and how that came about. I know last year, and again when it was dark and miserable, and I hadn't been out for a while, and Ian came in from a walk. He said, "For goodness sake, will you go for a walk?" I was all right then. So off I went for a walk, and it was quite late in the day, and I trotted up the back way into town, and I walked through the churchyard, and the light was coming through the stained glass, and then I walked around sort of more local areas, and you know how you do when the lights are just coming on in people's houses and you have a little nose. So I was having a little nose, and I started spotting sorts of little things, like there was a piano in a non-lit room, but the light was coming in from the hallway. So I thought, silent pianos. And then before I know it, I'd had my phone out and I was writing all these short little things. And there was a guy with a pipe, and I could smell pipe smoke in the air. And then a runner went past, and I noticed people were like kissing goodbye and half conversations, and suddenly, before I knew it, I was like running home. I said, here, I've got an idea for a song, and I wanted it to be this sort of like sort of magical little melody about walking through the village, just that special moment, that magical moment of the evening when the lights just dimming and people putting the lights on, and they've got little fairy lights, and maybe you see into the pubs, the glasses were just ready to be filled. It's that sort of anticipation, you know, when you're coming home from work and you think, oh, I just can't wait to get in tonight. And I know one of the nicest moments was when I was coming back down the hill. A lady came out of the door and she was underneath the street lamp, and she just smiled at me, and I just thought, that's a real magical moment, you know, to have connection with this other human being as I was sort of excited to get back home. So that's probably,
and so it is probably the jolliest song on the album as well. One of the things with Time Before Night as well, I quite enjoy. I love messing around with chords and playing around, but I also love messing around with time a little bit as well. And Time Before Night, I think also it just happened rather than consciously thinking about it, but to get that sense of excitement, anticipation, it kind of keeps jumping between 5/4 and 6/4, and it just worked, you know, it just sort of worked with the song and the lyrics. But for me, that's what I suppose it's difficult to say which my favorite is on the album. I love Seaweed Song because it's quirky and different, and again, that's a slightly unusual time in that, and the complete change is like it goes from 9/4 to 6/8 in the middle and keeps swapping back. And but I love the quirkiness of Seaweed Song. We had great fun filming the video for that with sort of waterproof camera down on the Cornish coast in the summer. Yeah. And but I think I love The Gift as well. The Gift is one of my personal favorites. I think there's something about the lyrics in that really catch me. I'm not quite sure what. There's just something, and I really like the tune that I wrote for it as well. I was really sort of pleased with that, and the harmonies in there. But then, and I suppose Winter Calls. That's one of my own lyrics as well. And tune that one, I was very pleased with that one, and that came about just we were driving home in the car. We'd actually been to Sidmouth for an afternoon previous winter, and driving home, it was just a particular light. It just sometimes, you know, you're just out at the right time, and there was a light, and through the trees coming back on these country lanes, it was just this like luminous grey. And the leaves were sort of falling off the trees and everything. And I think I shouldn't say it whilst I was driving, but I think by the time I got home, sort of 40 minutes later, I'd pretty well got most of the lyrics in my head, and sort of been driving along. Sort of, I couldn't wait to get in and sort of write it down. But that's a time of year that I think both of us really love. I guess maybe it comes back to that dance. I love spring, and I love summer and long nights. But in the middle of the summer, I always start longing for those late autumn days, and those mists and the greyish skies and the leaves falling and the dark nights coming. I always sort of long for that. And I think that, yeah, that's sort of where that song came out, and also sort of celebration of nature at that time of year as well, really.
Yeah, very topical one at the moment.
Absolutely, yeah.
Nice to finish with a winter one.
Yeah.
So in terms of you know, obviously you'd said about you've been to Stones Barn to do that course, and how does that sort of help you to get all those lyrics out? What about, if we could just talk about the process of that?
So for me, it's I tend to collect ideas. So I think some of my friends think I'm well, they know I'm strange anyway, but they might say something and maybe a certain phrase or word might just catch me. Not some people can say lovely phrases, or it's not always every phrase, but something just catches me. So I write down my little book and I collect, here's my little book, and then I collect all sorts of potential song title names, and then I sort of look back through that and see which one sort of like catches me. And then I always liken it to Lyra's leafiometer in the Dark Materials. You need to ask the right sort of questions before it starts working. So sometimes you can say to yourself, oh, I want to write something about that, and nothing happens, but then sometimes you might just come across something and then like almost everything starts flooding in. So I sometimes do that thing where you have a stream of consciousness of words and then pick out phrases that I like. Or sometimes another way I kind of work is I put music on that I'm thinking of, or the taste of what I want my song to be of, and then again that sparks the words. So I can listen to musical phrases or sounds, and then that gives me just that little nugget of something to then build the rest of the sort of lyrics on. I tend not like to be very obvious in my word set. Sometimes I can start off very wordy, lots of sentences, and I think, oh God, no one wants to listen to reams of stuff. So then I go back and then I start picking out the nuggets, and hopefully words and phrases that still describe what I'm trying to say, but not like, you know, rambling on. So I'm less obvious in what I like to write. For me, that's how it kind of comes up for me. I know.
I think I don't write words quite as often. Actually, I'd like to write more lyrics, but and possibly a little bit more literal and descriptive than you are with your lyrics, I think. But I think that, you know, there's that I think method that of just Alex mentioned it before, like the stream of consciousness, where you can just write down, you know, just take 10 minutes in a day to sort of sit down and scribble out whatever comes into your mind at the time. And this is one of the things that we did on that course with Hannah, and I think it's something that Rowan Reingens uses as well. And then, you know, just and you might do that several days and nothing comes out of it, and yet another time you might do it and you start to see things coming together. So
and you kind of sometimes have to just leave those words somewhere and come back to them, don't you? And sort of, you might think what isn't particularly useful, but you come back to it later and realize that it could be something.
Yeah, very much so. And the opposite's true as well. I've started writing things that I think, oh, this is I really love this one. This is great. This is going to be a good one. But then there's something in it and you just can't get any further. Then you come back to it a bit later and you look at it again and you just think, this is terrible. why did I ever think that was a good idea? And it goes, but then the opposite happens as well. So yeah.
And it's kind of like I've been collecting lots of little books, not, you know, you saw these gifty books that may have sort of ideas. I've got, you know, we picked one up about octopuses or some, you know, all sorts of weird and wonderful things. Again, because I don't want to pick subjects that are too obvious. So that we've got some songs about weird stuff, really, but it's just because I want to come at it from a different sort of angle. And I know we wrote a song called Starless Sea, and that came about because we were in a bookshop in Oxford and I saw a title of Starless Sea, and it just like triggered all this stuff off about this fisherman coming home and sort of being in this sort of empty void of the ocean, but the excitement of coming home. And but that I was in the middle of a landlocked county when I wrote that. I don't necessarily need to be by the sea to write a sea song, or sometimes it even, you know, sometimes being in the most urban area is the best place for me to write a song about nature, and vice versa. I find bouncing off different ideas in different scenarios is really well for me.
Yeah, I think you really think outside the box and come up with something totally different. And I'm more like Ian, I'm more like linear and sort of I don't know, more obvious, I suppose, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's hard
tasks,
to sort of describe it, isn't it, in a way? But that's what I kind of tend to. I have written. There's a few other songs I've written that we've got there, sort of in the store cupboard, as it were. But generally speaking, I kind of leave the lyrics to Alex, because I just really love Alex's lyrics, and I find it easier to write music to Alex's lyrics than I do to write music to my own. Just because I think that I just pick up what Alex is getting at in the lyrics, and it just inspires me to write the music. Yeah,
I think it's really interesting that you write in that partnership kind of way. Elton John and Bernie Taupin.
Yes, isn't it? Yeah,
exactly. We've heard that reference before.
Yeah.
Exactly.
not like them in any other way, I don't think. How do you pick out which ones you're going to make into a video? Is it just the ones that you think are the most, you just have a clear picture that they're really visual?
I think some are easy and obvious.
Yeah.
And some just happen because, like, Wild Creature was just, we were in Cornwall.
I was actually down in Cornwall, down near Penzance, filming, doing a film for a local artist down there, and we'd sort of finished a bit of filming in the morning, and in the afternoon, it was a bit of a miserable afternoon, but we just thought I would go for a walk anyway. And we just ended up walking on this beautiful green lane near Boscanoe and Stone Circle.
It was tipping down with rain.
Tipping down with rain. And all of a sudden I noticed Alex up ahead of me with her phone, sort of, diving around in the bushes. Whatever.
I'm a method actor.
Whatever she up to, and I sort of came, what you did, and it just sort of came to her that this would be a good idea for the video for Wild Creature, just something really simple. And it's the idea, it's the creature walking along, itself. It's such from the creature's viewpoint. So that just happened in that way. Something like Seaweed Song, that's really quite obvious. You just thought, oh, that'd be great fun to go and film. But I think we want to do more with video in future, and not always necessarily be quite so literal either. I think we want to start thinking a bit more outside the box with video. I mean, I love making video anyway, so I think, and that's something we want to sort of do more of in future, and make it all part of the package, really. The sort of the songs, the artwork, the visual in the videos as well.
Yeah, and you do it all yourself as well, do you?
Yeah, we do it all ourselves. Yeah.
Do you think you'll do any online gigs in the future to promote your album, and so we can hear you play it live?
We've mentioned that. I mean, one thing I think we've really missed this year, like all musicians have, I think, is playing live. And although for us, I guess it gave us the opportunity to, we've been doing a lot of writing, but it also gave us an opportunity to do this album actually. And but I think we've missed being out there performing, and I'm really looking forward to going back and being able to sing these songs and some of the newer songs we've been writing out. Because
that's when a song
in front of people
comes alive as well, when you get that feedback and feeling off your audience, and also you can learn where all the sticking points are as well, can't you?
Yeah, we can, but absolutely, I think it's really important to do them out live in front of an audience. But I think in terms of online gigs, we have mentioned it actually, whether we do it or not. One of the things that sort of stopped us so far, probably, is we probably haven't got the gear to do it. The sound quality would be really poor, and I mean, we've done a couple of things in front of friends on Zoom meetings where they said, oh, play a tune sort of thing, and they said that sounded terrible, because the sound quality is just not there. I think we need to invest in a little bit of gear, I think, if we're going to be able to do anything like that.
Yeah, well, there's so much to learn for artists at the moment about how to do all the technical side of.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and also I think because we just started all this in February, about a week before lockdown type of thing, so Yeah, I think now we've done the CD and are getting our music out there, and people are starting to know us, and we're getting good feedback. It's it gives us maybe the sort of thing right. We need to invest in
some better equipment so we can do that sort of
stuff.
thing.
We kind of didn't want to do that, and then people say, "Oh, that's a load of rubbish." And
yeah, because we'd only managed to do we'd only done one gig actually with our original material. We've done quite a few gigs before when we've done covers. But we'd only done one where we brought out 4 or 5 of our own songs back in February, and they went down really well. We were so chuffed and thought this is great. We're going to focus completely now on original material, and then bang, lockdown came in, and everything else that we'd been booked for the summer was just off, So that's why, as I say, that's why we sort of decided, well, let's knuckle down and do some recordings.
Yeah.
Out of which came the album, really. So
yeah.
But in future, definitely, I think we need to get ourselves teched up a bit, so we can do that.
It's hard to know how long it's going to go on for, isn't it? So I suppose
it is. Although I guess
although
maybe this will become. I think a lot of people there's a lot of positives to the online music thing for musicians.
Yeah, I can definitely see it running alongside back with live gigs and things. It has advantages for lots of people, for the listener and for the the artist as well. But fundamentally we need live music back. So
we do. But in the meantime, people can invest in your album.
They certainly can.
Camp.
Yeah.
And that you've got videos also on YouTube, don't you?
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
Really fantastic talking to you. I think it's such an interesting album, and your lyrics and everything. You can listen through to it, but then read all the lyrics on the digital disc, sort of see that whole other level of what it's all about.
Yeah.
So it's one that you can listen to time and time again and get more from it, I think. So really enjoyed it and highly recommend it. And thank you so much for talking to me.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.